Lindsay, how's it going?
Hi, Jeff. Great. Thanks for having me.
Well, today I'm joined by Lindsay Rothlisberger. She's the Director of Revenue Operations at Zapier, a brand that I think a lot of folks would recognize. I'd love to learn a little bit more about you and the role that you have over at Zapier.
Yeah, sounds great. So I started at Zapier over 5 years ago, which feels like a lifetime at a high growth tech company. And I was actually the very first marketing operations hire before we had a sales team and really started to expand our enterprise product. So now I oversee a RevOps team of 12 folks, and that's across tooling and technology infrastructure, analytics and insights, strategy and planning, sales enablement, and all of the day-to-day lead process, deal process, marketing automation, sales automation, and AI. So it's an expansive team across a lot of surface areas.
That's very cool. So a large portfolio. And which parts of the customer life cycle do you touch?
Yeah, great question. So we're all the way from lead acquisition. So we do less work directly tied to our pure PLG motion, but we are sort of like that connective tissue when a lead or a user is sales ready. So we're responsible for the architecture of the journey for a user to become a lead and engage with sales across SMB, mid-market, and enterprise go-to-market motions.
So Zapier has grown so much that it encompasses buyers of all shapes and sizes, use
Yes.
cases of all shapes and sizes, and verticals, again, of all shapes and sizes. Those motions in my mind introduce friction or opportunities to on-ramp and off-ramp between the different segments. So, for example, a self-serve PLG sign up who uses the product below a certain threshold is ready to convert to paid and maybe is actually underachieving what they could spend with
Right.
Zapier, and you have to identify what they could. I'm curious about when you think about this new era of AI, and I think it's become a tailwind for Zapier. Zapier is positioning itself as one of the kind of cornerstones of AI, particularly for automation. When we think about that, where do you see agents within your own workflow and then the opportunity for some of your customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've been planning our AI usage and implementation across the funnel. So we think of it across the funnel, but it varies very differently depending on which go-to-market motion we're building around. So, for example, in our SMB segment or our high velocity sales team, we're looking much more toward agentic automation to be able to actually identify the right customers to pursue, to generate the content that we're going to send to them, and to actually automate the whole process of booking a meeting and handing off the customer to a sales rep. And then on our enterprise side of the house, where we found the most value with AI, and a lot of these workflows are still agent like workflows, are more around making sure that our humans that are interacting with customers have all of the context that they need and are being guided about how to approach that customer conversation. So we have a specific project that we actually just launched where we're looking at all of the information about a customer who's coming up for renewal. And we're deciding how to strategically, AI is deciding how to strategically approach that renewal and then actually set up the customer facing rep for success in that conversation with a auto-generated slide presentation and just notes about how to guide the conversation. Lovely person on my team named Sarah is fantastic and is our customer success operations person. And she built that entire flow, which just launched a couple of weeks ago. But that's kind of the difference in terms of how we treat the high velocity versus the enterprise.
That's interesting. So I imagine a like 3 by 3 matrix, and then we'll expand it a little bit. On one axis is your motions, so SMB, mid-market, enterprise. And it's always a spectrum, but you have to establish a cutoff somewhere. And then on the other axis, you have top of funnel, sales funnel post sale. And
Yeah.
then you expand those out because you have stages or life cycle stages, MQL to SQL to SAO, et cetera. And then you have the specific micro actions that actually need to take place. So now you get to like a 3 by 3 by 3 dimension.
Hmm.
And so what I see generally are workflows that are that are discrete, right? It's a binary outcome. But
Yes.
then you're talking about actually providing a task to provide strategic insight in preparation for someone to take a task, which I think is super interesting. When you think about workflows versus agents, is there a clear distinction in your mind what those two are? And then how do you fit for purpose which one to select?
Great question. Yes. So we started very much with static AI steps in a workflow. Like it was a really easy place to start. One of our first use cases with AI in a static sort of implementation was we use AI to classify all of our chat conversations that we're having on our website. So we have a high volume of chats, and that is a source of revenue for us. We have a live sales team working those chats every day. And we wanted a way to classify the depth of the conversation and the type of conversation so that we could accurately attribute whether or not sales actually influenced an upgrade off of that chat conversation. Or was it just like a very basic question like, uh, where can I find this XYZ guide that you have in your FAQs or something like that. So we wanted to make sure that we were investing in chat in the right way. And if certain questions are getting answered over and over, that we knew we could reduce the amount of rep effort by just updating our website, for example. We wanted to be able to spot and pinpoint those. So we implemented an AI workflow that looks at all of that data and classifies it and drops it into a sheet. We can look at that data, we can make decisions about that data. But where we start to get into like the more agentic type workflows, that's where we're giving a little bit more autonomy. In that scenario, we didn't want autonomy because we have very clear rules around attribution that we wanted to make sure we followed. So I kind of think of it that way in terms of like a deterministic set output. And I don't know if I'm curious how you think about it, Jeff, because in my mind, it's like we basically just made it way easier where we didn't have to write a million pieces of logic in a workflow and we could use AI to like do that segmentation and classification for us in a bit more of a sophisticated way. And that's how I think about some of the more static AI use cases. But I'm curious if you agree or if you think about it differently.
So I came into revenue operations around 2014, 2015, and I had a strong SQL and a strong Python background. And
Mm,
I would write a lot of business logic in Python scripts that I would then put into packages and store them in a cron job and then call back and forth via API in order for that logic to do the work. But the logic that I built was always if this then that or case statements. And so it was always going to be an exact deterministic type of output.
hmm.
In today's world, I actually find these tools you're democratizing access because now you can use tools like Zapier, or you can use, if you're handy enough with APIs, you can then do a lot of things inside of these workflows to then call these more sophisticated services that pack a lot of punch behind it, right? So instead of this, if this, then that, they actually are reasoning engines. And so a simple use case that I built was a contact us form. You wouldn't believe how many times you get a contact us form and there's a message box, it's long text, and then folks can message sales or support. That contact us is obviously meant for sales, but folks will come in with all sorts of things. They'll pitch you. They will ask for invoice or billing inquiries. They will want technical support. So you have to have that text sent to an LLM, and this is a workflow, not an agent. And the workflow is a step within the workflow that then takes the text, sends it to ChatGPT. You give that GPT step a prompt, and the prompt is something of the lines of you are an expert in sorting these messages and routing it to the right person within the right department within the company. And here are the typical outcomes. You send it to finance, send it to support, send it to sales. And then here are some examples, and here's the expected output. Please, in your output, only say one word, and the only words you can say are either support, finance, sales. And then the next step would be some sort of like path or decision criteria, which would then take a determinants output and where to route it. Now that's a
Yeah.
workflow. An
Yep.
agent would be different. You give the agent the tools, and obviously, hopefully, it packs a lot of punch with memory, and then you give it the inputs it needs, and then you can still give it prompt, and I encourage you to give it a prompt, but then it would decide what the next step would be. You wouldn't have to pre-program those next
Right.
steps. It would just take care of it for you. Now, you want it out. You want an out if it messes up, obviously, right? Like I had this talk yesterday at Zap Connect, which is AI is like the ultimate intern, but interns are worse than your entry level employees. And we all
Yeah.
know entry level employees need a lot of handholding as leaders. And so the
Hmm.
amount of handholding you need for an intern is tremendous. And so the handholding with AI today, 2025, is pretty high. But it's a bar that needs to be established pretty low. And so when we get to the world of micromanaging these agents, we need to get to a place where acknowledging in 1 out of 10, you're going to get an error. And then maybe next year it's 1 out of 100. That's better. 1 out of 1,000 is even better. And there's some industries where you have 1 out of 100. That's not a good thing because like
Hmm.
1 out of 100 patients get cancer. That's usually bad. And so
Totally.
you want to get to an industry where it's 1 in a million. And I think sales reps can deal with 1 out of 10 leads that they get are bad. I think they can deal with that, right? Maybe even on one
Yeah.
out of four. But when you get to 1 in out of 1 million, then you're in an outstanding area of expertise where AI, essentially replaces, what we can do as humans. So just I'm
Yeah.
rambling on a little bit, but those are some of the
No.
AI use cases that I built, distinguishing between workflow or agent.
Yeah, and the way I think about agents too is instead of like following a fixed logic, they're evaluating the context and they can actually make adjustments. So if you want to really focus on building an agent and improving it over time, like that's more of a possibility when working with agents versus like a static output. And the agents can really start to specialize in specific things and, like you said, improve those outcomes over time. So I thought that was really interesting too.
So with an agent, you give it a task and then it determines the path. It comes up with its own path. And then ideally it's looping through and assessing its performance and
Yeah.
then shooting out the right output, right? The one that it decides is the best. I still think you need a human in the loop to assess over time. And a simple mechanism like remember dig.com a long time ago, thumbs up, thumbs down. Thumbs
Yeah.
up, thumbs down is an incredible mechanism to let the agent know, like, hey, here's how I thought you performed, and then you give it an open text box and describe, what you would have improved, and especially if you can see his chain of thought through each step along
Yeah.
the way of what it's doing, that is fantastic. So,
Yeah.
um, so let's talk about use cases. So
Yeah.
there's a concept in GTM today where there's an AI mandate. You need to be an AI native business, and so companies are being asked to bring in AI across every element of their business, whether
Yeah.
it's in the product itself or it's within your own management processes. I'm curious how you think about introducing AI and quote unquote eating your own dog food by using Zapier.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a really interesting journey. So we actually hosted an AI Hack Week just a few weeks ago for our go-to-market team in particular, which was really fun and interesting. We've done Hack Weeks in the past, mainly focused on our product and engineering teams, but it was a great exercise in go-to-market because with AI and with Zapier, we now have the tools to build really powerful engines and so the team came up with a lot of interesting use cases, which I can share some of those here as well. But I think it's been in RevOps in particular, we were very early adopters of AI because it's such a natural fit with what we're already doing. We're doing automation, we're building efficient workflows, we're trying to gather customer context and make sure reps are set up for success. So it came really naturally in terms of where across the funnel to fit it in. I think the big challenge that we've had is figuring out where to like double down and really build on the initial like wide breadth of use cases that we have today. Um, Yeah, I can talk about specific use cases, Jeff, if you think that'd be most helpful to start, or I can talk about just that adoption curve and what that looked like.
I think let's go over maybe one use case, and then I think more importantly, obviously, change management and adoption is going to be hard. I
Yeah.
actually find like in my own case, when I launch an AI project and
Hmm.
it has benefits to, and it usually is in the form of, hey, you just saved me X number of hours per week. Thank you. And it's usually in a position of review and edit, right? As opposed to I start from a blank slate and I don't know what to write. Like for example,
Yeah.
sales rep post call, right? A call in my mind is pre-call activities, the call itself, and then post-call activities. And sales reps generally, if they're busy, they're going to have back-to-back-to-backs, and they don't get to
Right.
write their notes until like 4 p.m. local. And it's hard
Yeah.
for them to recall exactly what happened in the first, second, third call. And so their memory recall is actually quite diminished, and you have subpar inferior notes. And so,
Yeah.
I think if you have the grader reading the transcript, summarizing it, and then writing it back to the relevant fields in Salesforce, that's a huge unlock. Because
Yeah.
then the gap between perfect memory versus memory recall is wide, especially for those early morning calls.
Yeah.
And then the later calls, you have human performance that's lagging because maybe your reps are tired, but their
Right.
memory recall is actually really good, but their memory recall is very good on a poor call, right? So it's like catch 22.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's actually really interesting because that's where we started was in the sales rep efficiency part of the customer journey. And so we initially created a call prep guide for our sales reps with AI, and it was just gathering all the information about the customer, all the data about what they've done recently in terms of marketing engagement, what their product usage looks like and stitch that in together into a call brief for the rep. And that was fine. That was great. Like it was helpful. It saved some of their time, right? But where I think you really start to see like the power of AI is when you take things a step further each time. So it's like, well, okay, we got the call prep guide and we've got the post call notes. Like, let's generate the email. Let's send the email into whatever tool email platform they're using and ready to go so they can send the follow up quickly. And then we actually even built on now, which was probably one of our highest impact AI use cases, is our agent that reviews all of these calls and provides very detailed coaching for our reps. So we've actually built a process that evaluates them on their negotiation skills, the consistency of the pitch about Zapier, and we can kind of tweak it with any sales enablement that we've provided recently. And not only does that give us like a benchmark to see like is our enablement improving things, but it also then also saves time for the managers because they have access to like this rich database of feedback based on calls, so they don't have to listen to everyone. So we've sort of taken that approach because in the past, early on when we started, we created a call prep guide. That was like our first AI project, but it very quickly decayed and the rep stopped using it. So you have to like think about these solutions like an actual product that you're building features onto, that you're adding, you're upping the quality and improving it over time. And I think that's hard for RevOps teams because we're just spread across so many different surface areas. And it's really easy to just launch something and move on to the next thing. So I would say that's one of my biggest learnings.
So there's a paradigm there, right? Which
Mhm.
is RevOps is the product manager for RevOps for go-to-market infrastructure. And that includes process, training,
Mhm.
systems, maybe even culture. And so that paradigm shifts the skills and the mindset of a RevOps leader to one of a chief product officer. And if you're
Mhm.
operating on, product 1.0, right, it feels like dial-up versus, broadband,
Yeah.
versus Starlink today, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, I do need to continually go back, and it forces trade-offs, right? Because I like to think that
Yeah.
AI actually does the dirty work of things that we don't want to do, right? So there's one concept which is AI actually increases the surface area of what RevOps can take on, But then what you're talking about is no, 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 no. Just do a few things extremely well. And those are the huge unlocks. So those are two big paradigm shifts.
Yeah.
One's like the little robot in Star Wars or Star Trek that's cleaning up the floor. And then the other one is the central interface for the largest, tool that you have to use. And I
Yeah.
have to think about that a little bit.
I know it's been a challenge for me, honestly, too, to figure out like where to focus because there's just so many different things you could build AI use cases around. One of the other things we recently did is we're using AI to auto fill in closed OneNotes because we found that those were just not helpful. Like the reps weren't taking the time to really be thoughtful. And it sounds like a very small, simple use case. And if we left it at that, it's like, cool, close OneNotes. That's great. Like the board doesn't care. But like when you start to think about, well, how do I build an agentic foundation to keep my CRM data up to date and to let me know when a deal is stale and shouldn't be in this stage and notify the rep. Like you can really like treat that as a full product that you can build across your entire funnel. But it's like, well, do we do that? Or do we go work on triaging leads and focusing on improving performance there? Or do we go try and figure out if we can build a fully agentic SDR program? So it feels honestly like a little bit overwhelming, but it's also like this is a whole new set of capabilities that is a whole new part of what we couldn't have done some of this stuff. So it's like that's on top of all the other work and keep the lights on stuff like tool management, forecasting, process planning, and territory stuff. So it is like difficult to figure out how to like stack rank it all.
I think it goes back to our muscle and our skills as RevOps leaders to go
Yeah.
through effort impact, right? I use effort impact as a matrix primarily for my large rocks. Large rocks in the sense of you have a jar and you have to fill it up with either large rocks, medium rocks, or pebbles. And you always start off with filling out the large rocks, then the medium rocks, then the sand. And there's only so much capacity. But again, AI actually potentially is another trade-off. Is like, well, does it make the jar larger? I don't think so.
Yeah, it
Not at
makes
this
the jar
time.
larger, and sometimes the use cases are sand, but can be the foundation for, you
So
know,
that's the
yeah.
thing. You have it for very rote what I call thankless tasks, right?
Yes.
And you have high effort, high impact, and then low effort, low impact task, which data integrity is actually a high impact, but the data itself is not high impact.
Right.
It's the decisions that you make on top of the data that's high impact. And so yeah, we have to get to a place where there are primary, secondary, and tertiary, and we want to make good decisions. And it's actually secondary, right? Because the
Yeah.
primary is the data at which you're built on, and it's the one thing that most folks don't talk. They don't talk about in the day to day, but they complain
Yeah.
about it. They complain about it.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think one of the things we've been talking about too, which I think is a bit harder, is like actually using AI to like write board memos and business reviews. And we haven't gotten there yet, but I feel like that could also just be like a huge time saving.
I think the interesting thing, so I spend a lot of time getting AI to do analysis and writing.
Yeah.
And those are some of the use cases that I think folks do not talk about often in revenue operations, but there
Yeah.
are a lot of folks who talk about writing in marketing, right? So AI
Mhm.
is tackling a huge chunk of like writing. So I like to build little micro agents, one or micro prompts. One focuses on tone, and one focuses on receptiveness of the audience. Another one will focus on the hook. And so, when we think about
Oh, cool.
breaking down emails, you write the hook, the body, and the call to action, right? It's
Yeah.
typically and then Sales Loft and Outreach had research that basically said 100 words or less for your outbound emails. Don't make it anything longer. So then you have and these LLMs are actually quite verbose. They want to
Yeah.
go over the 100 words. It's like, no, 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 no.
Got a
I'm gonna
lot
get,
to say.
yes, keep it simple, right? And then not only that, I still want to A/B test different variations, right? So
Mhm.
like if I feed you the psychology of my buyers, I feed you the metrics that they're measured by and the fears and hopes they have when they fall short or they exceed those metrics. And then what's the impact of our solution or our offering on those solutions? And then what is what we do different compared to their existing options? And then you can write a ton of different variations. And these LLMs are quite good at giving you 100 variations, right?
Yeah.
And so you
Yeah,
you could
that's
start
so
doing
helpful.
not an A/B test. You could start doing an AZ test and every letter in between AZ, which is super interesting, especially if you have a large TAM.
Yeah, I love that. We have this GPT internally that one of our executive assistants for our C-level team created, and it allows you to submit like executive memos and get feedback based on what our execs typically sort of like push on and pry on. And I find that it's like really helpful. Like it's really helped me think through some of the like edge cases or things I need to iron out. So I would say that's been super valuable. Now I don't know what I could do. Maybe it's given me the validation that I've just always needed in exec conversations, but it's been really helpful.
Here's another little use case, the deal review call. So
Mm,
walk through a deal review. A deal review is one VP, eight sales reps, and then maybe
okay.
someone in operations in there or enablement. So you have 11, 12 people in a room, and the deals just start flying. The deals are discussed at breakneck pace, right? 2, 3 minutes. Or worst case scenario, one deal takes up all the entire meeting,
Mm,
right? So what you do is you feed your prompt the transcript of the call with the names of the speakers. Then you feed it the open pipeline in Salesforce or your HubSpot, and that way it can reconcile how folks will say the account name versus how it's actually spelled. And then you can pair it with any rubrics. So, what are the most common questions asked by the manager? What are the most common questions? So you might have a medic rubric, and then you
hmm
might have like a sales process map. Sales process map being what stages you're in, and then how many days, and then you can feed it all the metadata, like how long it's been in that stage, how many days, etc. And then you can feed it like the previous deal reviews, and you can see if you've made progression on those calls or
Oh,
not.
cool.
So you can give it context and say, okay, you are now head of revenue operations. These are the things you're looking for, and here are all your inputs and the historical
Amazing.
context. And you can start to feed it, and then get smarter and smarter. And you can say, okay,
Yeah.
well, this prompt didn't really give me the outputs I'm looking for. What would you improve on it? How would you improve the prompt, right? And then get the new prompt from the LLM, and
Yeah.
it'll actually give you a better prompt. And you could build that, and that could be your like VP of RevOps or your
Seriously.
CRO in a box.
That is so cool. Yeah, I love that. I feel like the people who are thinking creatively about AI in this way, it can just make you so much better at your job. And I think even as a RevOps leader, like my background is in marketing ops. So leading a RevOps team for me initially was very intimidating. I didn't have a lot of the background that a lot of leaders have in like forecasting and territory design and things like that. And so I feel like if you're a really strong generalist who can think really deeply about some of these problems and leverage these tools in the right way, it can really help set you up for success. And I've been really grateful for that.
Well, I empathize with that.
Yeah.
I came from a finance background and was
Oh,
thrown into sales ops. And then one of my marketing ops folks who reported to me went on like vacation for weeks. And I can tell you that
that's what happened to me.
I struggled mightily to backfill. It's like, oh my God, what's an attribution model? Where the campaign calendar,
That's
I'm
crazy.
missing deadlines left and right here. I was doing a very poor job of marketing operations. So I totally empathize. I'm
Yeah.
curious about, when you think about developing your RevOps roadmap, do you have a separate AI roadmap that you're also
Oh my
thinking
gosh,
through?
this is like the question. 'Cause I go back and forth on this. Like we used to have a separate AI roadmap, which was actually more helpful in managing up. So showing like what AI projects we're doing and how we're thinking about AI. but it's so integrated into our processes now that that feels off. And I think that's a good thing. I think that means that we're maturing in the right direction. So, for example, I looked at our roadmap for Q4 and I'm like, we have no AI projects. What the heck? Like, what's going on? And then, like, we need some big AI transformational projects on here, you know? And someone on my team goes, Lindsay, we're building the whole CS scale program that is going to be completely powered by AI, like in all of our AI tools. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So you start to not having to set these AI goals, like I'm going to cut efficiency or I'm going to improve velocity by XYZ. And you can actually start to map these AI projects to customer outcomes. Like we're going to get all of these scale renewals to a certain stage of adoption, and that's going to be powered by AI. And that's when that story becomes like even stronger. So I think it's a good thing, but it can get hidden just because once you start to incorporate it under the hood of things, like you don't think of it as a separate initiative.
It makes me think that AI isn't the project itself. It's actually an ingredient, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
it's almost like
tool.
RevOps eats AI, right?
Yeah.
So that's super interesting. So I always ask this at the end of the show, by the way, and I
Okay.
appreciate your time and joining me. What is one piece of advice that you would like to leave for the go-to-market community?
I think the best advice I got was from a CMO that I reported into back when I did marketing operations. And I was very good at like thinking through different potential ways we could go about doing things or thinking through alternate solutions to problems that we maybe haven't considered. And I think that led to a perception that I didn't have a strong point of view about what we should be doing. And so the best career advice I got was that I needed to have a stronger point of view, even if I didn't feel fully confident that I had all of the information. I could still be humble about my point of view, and it could not be super strongly held, and be factored in new information and can be changed. But I think like what really up-leveled my career was starting to really think about, well, what do I think? What would I do if I were the executive in this scenario? And I've started to form strong opinions that have helped me earn a seat at the table in strategic conversations. And that's been really, really valuable.
Amazing. Lindsay, for those who want to learn more about you and more about Zapier, where can they go?
Yeah, great question. I am on LinkedIn, Lindsay Rothlisberger. We also have Zap Connect on demand through October, which is our user conference, and there's tons of content there about building agents. Jeff has a session, and my team also hosted a session about AI workflows from RevOps you can steal now. So I would definitely recommend checking out Zapier.com and Zapier.com/ZapConnect.
Amazing. Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.